Welcome to the Spiritual Emergence Podcast, where enlightened souls share their stories of spiritual awakening and re-entry into the world. I'm Renee Gillespie, your host and founder of Waylighter Consulting, dedicated to helping those on a spiritual path move into the world with their unique gifts. Today we meet Lane, a Gen Z who struggled with both gender and spiritual awakening simultaneously. She talks about overcoming the fear of rejection by learning to extend care and support to yourself that you usually extend to others, and by finding others who can support and love you even when they don't understand you. Lane, welcome. You and I have spoken before about how frightening it can be to feel like the core you, the person that you've evolved to, may not be accepted by other people. So for me, that's been a spiritual identity outside of traditional faith, but you juggled twice that.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with so many parts of that. I've connected with you sharing about feeling that part of yourself really hidden, and even kind of hidden from yourself. I felt that way about my true identity and my spiritual identity, my queer identity. It took me so long to access those parts of myself. And I think, it's just hidden under this um realm of normalcy, and trying to kind of stay in this way that it feels kind of not correct, and not true, but it just always felt like there was something else under the surface, and I hadn't quite tapped into it. I always felt, really sensitive as a kid, just really emotional and very much in tune with everyone else's emotions, but had no idea how to connect with my own. When it really cracked open the first time, was when my dad passed away. And it, I had been kind of in this role of caretaker and of, like I said, connected to everyone in my family more than myself, and that intense kind of rupture and change to our family structure just changed so much about what I saw was important, and how I felt about myself, and who was I after this. I also, interestingly, kind of started to, in my deep grief state, felt so raw, and so it felt like the veil had lifted, and I was seeing spirits. I was seeing in my apartment, I was just kind of seeing all these beings in my periphery, and just felt so watched, and felt so disconnected from the physical realm that everyone else was in, and I just felt like I had gotten sucked into a whole other reality. And I was having some really intense dreams around that time too, where it felt like my dad was communicating with me, and kind of as I've leaned into understanding this part of myself, I have so much communication with spirits and in dreams. But that was kind of the first time it started happening in such an intense and palpable way that I was whoa. And it was giving me a lot of peace to have those experiences. I would wake up and I would be, crying, and it was such an emotional, but when I went to share those experiences with my mom or my sister or my aunt, they were not accepting of it, and they didn't, they didn't understand or know how to process, or kind of were just maybe thought I was making it up, or those kind of things where they just even just more, they were oh, okay, cool. But I could see in their expression, in their body, they weren't, they were kind of rejecting what I was sharing. So I kind of was okay, and didn't continue to share those things with them. It also, to kind of tie in the identity component of it, those things were happening, I felt such an intense like shift within myself. And I that was like when I first really also started expressing more of my queer identity. It felt like that like version of myself that had been just kind of put on the back burner because there was so much more like intense things going on. It was like, okay, now I can focus and need to focus on this part of myself and kind of like dig it out from deep within. I shaved my head. I just
what a
like,
ritual. Yeah,
absolutely. I just was, it was on my 25th birthday, and I was like, if I don't do it now, I don't know if I ever will.
Yeah.
And I felt like so free and proud of myself. And it was just a layer of, you know, exploring my gender and my presentation and like, how did that feel correct for me? And yeah, but there also like during that time there was so much pain. There was so much confusion about like who it felt like you know, try this, okay, no, that's wrong. Okay, try this expression, no, that still doesn't feel right. And but each one was so important to go through because it had to be expressed. It kind of felt like, you know, that version of myself that I was at like as a queer preteen, like as a gay kid, you, I feel like, are connected with those parts of yourself before you understand what they mean, and then the world kind of stuffs them in, and tells you like, no, you, that the way that is wrong because it's so much more like being gay and being queer is so much more than just your sexual identity and preference. I think it is just kind of like a way that people exist and in the world, you know, it's so much more than that. And I think those are the parts that are shaped at a young age more so than the like sexual preference, because those are what's expressed as a child is like, you know, sometimes this whimsy, sometimes these things that are maybe not practical. And yeah, so it kind of just felt like a really painful like reconnection with that part of myself. But also it was like so beautiful. So yeah, that was kind of the start of that.
I really love the statement that you just made, you know, that these were parts of yourself that were beautiful. Like, so tell me a little bit more about that connection.
I think like for me it was like finding like the beauty, but like the care and the support for myself that I didn't feel, and like turning all of those things that I've found value in myself by extending to others. I tried to learn, like it was a huge part of that was learning how to shift that like love and care towards myself. And there were times when I was doing it that I remember not feeling beautiful. And like looking back now, I can see it as like a tender and beautiful process of care towards myself. But it was so like it was the first time that I had separated myself from the female, womanly, beautiful kind of societal norm and expectation. And I had prioritized what felt good for me in my body. And I think that is beautiful, but it was like such a difficult process. And I feel like the feedback that I received from the, you know, from my family and my friends was one of kind of concern or one of like misunderstanding. And I think that it was something that was like so tumultuous in me at the time that I was like going through the motions and knowing like I have to do this, but I kind of don't understand why. And I think that part maybe because I didn't have the words to explain what I was going through, which I think people don't when they're in the thick of what they're expanding and experiencing. You know, people that are onlooking maybe don't understand. And so I felt really alone during that time. And I felt really, I don't know, even just like ashamed in some ways of like the experience that I was having and it being witnessed in any way.
We've come together around this idea of, you know, of the shame that can go with being outside of the norm, you know, totally. The mainstream. Yeah. And you said, you know, like the experiences I was having and that they were witnessed by others. You know, that word witness is a really powerful one. It's one that I'm hoping to make more empowered, but it's not always. So could you tell me a little bit about what did you mean by using the word witness?
To be witnessed, like when you're empowered, like you have to be like, I think, very strong to like feel comfortable being witnessed. And a lot of the time that's not the case. I think a lot of the time people on the receiving end of that word witness feel vulnerable, and feel kind of like a spectacle even. I don't know, that's kind of how I felt, where it just felt like people were watching me and they were watching me from this other side, that it wasn't, they weren't standing right next to me and watching what I was going through with me. They were watching from this other perspective that felt grating and judgmental and you know, like you're being studied in a way that is just, it's not comfortable at all. And but I also do think, like, you know, okay, so it's the process of stepping into your own power, and you're in such a vulnerable state at that point when you are witnessed as your full self, like step into your fullest power, like that feels amazing. That feels empowering. I think, like, the more that I have stepped into myself and been witnessed by my peers and like by people that love and support me, like that feels amazing. And I think that that is the shift and the difference of like the context of the word witness, and like, because I think it's who is doing that witnessing that feels like either really shameful and dissatisfying, uncomfortable, or if it's your community, if it's people that love you and support you and understand you, it feels so amazing and so empowering. I kind of have like received a lot more of that recently, especially since moving to New York, being around more queer and trans people. It's such a still uncomfortable at moments, but very beautiful experience to be witnessed by people that understand and see you and see the parts of yourself that you're stepping into.
I loved what you said about community. You know, you first talked about friends witnessing and what the difference that experience makes. And then you said, you know, someone like a community. What has community meant to you?
Yeah, I feel like growing up, I didn't have like a community, and I didn't really have an understanding of the word. And I think truly over the last couple years, I have like grown such a warm and beautiful understanding of community, because I have so many friends, so many beautiful people that I have met, that you know, you have your close circle of friends, people that you talk to, but then especially in New York and in the queer community, in the like the gay spaces, everyone in there like is part of your community. Everyone in there is looking out for you. Everyone, you have this shared experience that really bonds you, to the point where I know if I needed help, if I needed some, you know, I could go to someone in the crowd and saying, hey, XYZ, this is happening. Community has like an innate level of connection that kind of takes that edge off of, how do I know you? How do I relate to you? Like, community, it is already, your guard is down.
What is different about the expectations that the community might express in that moment when you go and ask?
If someone is like posting asking for care after a surgery or something like that, sometimes it's there's usually a monetary ask, a goal, but then there's also this other level of care of like, who's picking you up from, and this is usually like a closer circle. Who's picking you up from the hospital? Who is making sure that you have food for the week? We all do what we can, and there's not this pressure. It's not like oh, I have to do this kind of thing. It really is. There's so much joy, especially in community members, like receiving that care that people need so badly. Yeah. There's always opportunities to show up for each other.
So there's this kind of awakening that if I'm hearing you correctly, and please do correct me because I'm cross-checking what I'm hearing with you. There's this awakening of self that isn't separate from a spiritual awakening. And that there's like a spiritual component to this whole process.
Absolutely. I think they're so entangled. It was kind of hand in hand. And the more that I allowed my true like identity to be seen, the more that my spiritual power and connection just kind of also came to light. At that time I was like starting to look into different like modalities and just kind of started, like blossoming my interest in understanding crystals. And I also got really into taking care of plants at that time. That was like a huge I think used it at the time, like when I was grieving, like as a coping mechanism, but it also was like a point of strength and power and like connection to this beautiful source. Like I just like love plants and I've always had an affinity for them. I think leaning into that magic is there too.
Talk to me a little bit, if you would, about like, do you share that you're like, how open are you about your spiritual beliefs? How do they come into play with your day-to-day kind of discussions, conversations, life?
Kind of again in my close circle and in my community. There's a lot of people that are in tune with that. Outside of that circle, I share some of it with my sister. She is very closed off to that realm, but she's accepting of me. She's kind of like with my queerness, with my identity, with everything. She's like, I just want you to be happy. So that feels loving and supportive in its own way, but it's not like she is an active listener, but her energy is a little bit different because she doesn't connect with those things. So she's like, oh, okay, cool. Even in spaces like with my therapist, with my psychoanalyst, I kind of have started to share some more of that as part of my beliefs and the way that I see the world and context and like structure for me as a person. At first I presented it, the first couple times I talked about it, I kind of presented it in this way where I was like putting it out like a little breadcrumb to maybe see how she would accept it and see how it would be read. Because I was talking about angels and in my dreams and how I feel like I am able to like receive communication from them. And I think I said like from my spirit guides, from my angels or whatever, or from like my inner self, like something like that. And she kind of like caught me and was like, why'd you say it like that? Why'd you dismiss like the validity of what you were saying? And absolutely. And I just was like, I think, obviously I was gauging how you would respond and kind of tailoring my response or tailoring my expression to assuming what your response would be. And she was like, well, if that's what you believe, then that's what's real, and that's what's real for you. And she also, I think said something like about how she also, believes in whatever gesture or whatever way she validated that. And so now it's easier for me to I just talk about it in the space and I don't question it, and I don't have to I think there's this added layer of explanation that we do maybe when we're talking to someone who we assume is not subscribing to the same belief. I think it comes from a place of not wanting to be judged or even persecuted for your belief. Yeah, I think it comes from the ingrained space where we conform and keep those parts of ourselves private because those are the tender and special parts. And I think as a society, there's so many different experiences that people go through, but I think that there's kind of this commonality of those parts of ourselves needing to be hidden or suppressed. And that is just so damaging, I think, to the collective at large. And all the internal work that we do as individuals is empowering the whole to be more accepting of that and just be more expressive with it and unapologetic, I think, is something that I'm working towards, where it's just I am this way, and I think, and that in kind of period, I am this way, and it doesn't need to have any more extra words after that.
And with that wisdom, we close this episode of the Spiritual Emergence podcast, where we talked about extending love to yourself that you usually reserve to others. We spoke about the importance of community and the power of our changes and our truths being witnessed by someone who can honor them, of stating our truths unapologetically and with more expectation that they'll be honored. Many thanks to Lane, who is a beautiful and thoughtful soul who invites others to conversations about things that matter. That's the essence of this podcast. Waylighters, until next time, wishing you luminous skies. Let your own lovely freak flag fly.